And welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. 2 weeks ago now, a freight train loaded with hazardous chemicals was derailed in the United States state of Ohio. Around 50 carriages were transformed into a partially burning heap of wreckage. Officials seeking to deal with the mess chose to deliberately set fire to toxic vinyl chloride, unleashing a black mushroom cloud of poisons that was quickly so vast it could be seen from space. The whole area reeks of acrid smoke. Residents of East Palestine have reported headaches, irritated eyes and breathing problems. There have been reports of dead fish in the rivers and of countryside littered with dead wildlife and pets. Environmental Protection Agency staff in the US have sought to reassure residents that risks to health are minimal, but anger is growing. Joining me now to contemplate the long-term future of East Palestine and the wider state of Ohio is the hazardous materials specialist, Sil Caggiano. Good evening, Sil Caggiano. Thanks for making time for me.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me, Sil, what is the latest you can say about the situation for the people in that community of East Palestine?
Well, as of last night, the previous night, they attempted to have a meeting with Norfolk Southern and the people involved. Norfolk Southern, who is the owner of the rail cars, decided that it was going to be hazardous to their health and welfare to attend this meeting and declined to come. And it's just another issue in a long string of failed ideas or failed promises that these people are undertaking. From the very beginning, they got information that drips and dribbles, and they were told one thing, and then they were told something else. And my thing is, when you have a situation like this, you tell the truth, you tell it first, you tell it all, and you tell the people what you're going to do. And that wasn't forthcoming, and it still isn't. The governor of the state of Ohio has not declared that as an emergency site yet. However, the government has decided that they're going to send FEMA in anyway. And one of the telling things is they're sending a FEMA incident management team in there, which should kind of give you a clue what the part of the problem is there. I think there's a lot of entities running around doing things, and they may or may not be in the interest of the people, but more in the interests of Norfolk Southern. So these people are aggravated. And they have the ongoing issues. They're getting skin rashes. There's chickens that are dying. These people are worrying justifiably that, it's a farm community. Are they going to be able to plant? Are they going to have problems? Is their water safe? They've been told the water was safe. Then they were told the water wasn't safe. Then they were told to drink bottled water. Now they're being told the water is safe. It doesn't build confidence when you have those kind of things going on. And it started off from the very beginning. One of the reasons why I got involved in this is because they weren't telling the media anything. And the United States has what's called the SARA Title III. It's a law that was enacted, is basically billed as the chemical right to know. And as the media is the people's agency with which they can hold truth to power. And they weren't being told anything. It became very clear that Norfolk Southern was controlling this, and quite possibly still are.
I understand, Sil, that it's really not topping news agendas in the United States, is it? It's not cropping up on national news. When viewed from here, it looks like an enormous incident. I mean, I believe the word Chernobyl was trending on social media because so many people were equating what had happened in East Palestine to Chernobyl, which is to say a town that might die.
It's definitely going to be a historic event, right up there with, Love Canal and Times Beach and a lot of the other toxic hazards. One of the things that kind of thrust me into the international media and the local media was when I was interviewed, I said that we nuked a town to basically get a railroad running. And what the catalyst for that was, there's a gentleman, I think from Darlington, Pennsylvania, that had a picture of that gigantic mushroom cloud that she's seen there. It had stratified out, and he was videoing it, and as he was videoing it, there was stuff falling out onto his property. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, my goodness, this looks like one of those, nuclear apocalyptic winter things where you have fallout coming down. And I thought about it and I says, well, yeah, that's what it is. So it just wasn't a nuclear weapon. We used chemicals, but we basically nuked a town so that we could hurry up and get a railroad running again, which, is always number one in the rail industry's thoughts, is getting the railroad running again, especially now when you have in-time delivery and, they're cutting workers, they're cutting safety regulations. And the cutting of these safety regulations go back years, probably at least 4 or 5 administrations in the United States government.
So bear with me while I bring in my studio guests. Greg, it feels as if, we're being invited, or certainly the citizens of the United States have been invited to pay attention to these weather balloons that have been shot down at great expense, and to look away from their fellow citizens in Ohio who are living through a nightmare.
Yeah, it's amazing how it's been ignored by much of the media. It was surely ignored by Washington. But President Biden, not a word. Pete Buttigieg, who's the Secretary of Transportation, he was talking about, gender equity, and there's too many white men in construction crews, and racial equity. I mean, they're completely asleep at the wheel on this thing. And so, part of it is that it's in flyover land, so-called flyover land. 70% of the people in that county voted for Trump. It's a Rust Belt town. It's really shown the devastation in towns like that before the railroad
before the derailment.
I mean, it's really horrible the way they've ignored East Palestine, and at least until a few days ago. And finally, someone from the EPA showed up who seemed like an intelligent and hardworking guy. Michael Regan, I think is his name. But prior to that, nothing from the leadership, and it's really shameful.
Molly, is this another example of people just being disregarded and dismissed, and the people above just make decisions that don't seem to take into account the real-time lives of the people that they're elected to serve?
I think it's very interesting, this idea that you have fashionable causes and, things that happen at home, and we see it here as well, that just aren't sexy. It's not, we don't talk about it. So if you look at, going back to our last conversation, the amount of money that the Biden administration has given to Ukraine, that's $100 billion, and yet they haven't, sent FEMA in to Ohio. Like, this is insane. What about the people at home? And it seems odd that you wouldn't want the spotlight on that until you understand the backstory and history of, regulatory capture, which affects the EPA there. And, there are things that the federal government presumably wouldn't want coming out about the years of laxer and laxer oversight.
Sil Caggiano, I'm at a loss myself, having watched this as much as I can and sought as much information as is available. The officials were playing it down very early on. How can there be any possibility of assessing the long term for East Palestine, indeed for the state of Ohio, until a whole lot more work has been done?
Well, I agree with you there, and this is something that I was, kind of crying for, kind of like being the voice in the dark, crying about, there's more than just the chemicals that were spilled. In my 39 years of dealing with hazardous materials and fire department work, being a battalion chief in the city of Youngstown and all that stuff, all the case studies that I've seen, I've never, ever seen a rail company decide that they're going to blow up these cars. They actually use shaped charges under these cars to blow them up and then dump all the chemicals into a pit to burn it off. I've never seen that. It's just arcane in my mind that they decided to do that. And I understand they had problems with these other containers. There's a possibility that they may levy. And there was also a possibility that they might not. Given the low boiling points of some of the chemicals, I get their concern, but I think taking a possibility and turning it into something for sure may have not been the best move. But let's go back to the political leaders. They're down with this. The governor of Ohio was down with this. Everybody signed on board, said it was a great idea, and then they did it, and now everyone's kind of saying, well, that cloud over top of it, that doesn't look like a great idea. Yeah, no joke. It wasn't. And when they told me they were going to do it, I was like dumbfounded. I was like, what? And they did this, and I'm saying, okay, now you're creating, all that black cloud is nothing more than incomplete combustion products of everything that was in these containers, plus anything else that burned. So now instead of having the byproducts of vinyl chloride, butyl acrylate, ethylene hexyl acrylate, ethylene glycol monobutyl, and the other chemicals, you now have other chemicals that have been burned and created dioxins, furans, formaldehydes. Now that's being spread over that entire mushroom cloud area. And I'm like, my goodness, what are we doing here? And I can't help but think this was a push to get the railroads open. The political leaders decided this was a good option, probably under assurances of Norfolk Southern. And, when you're doing that, it's the fox guard and the hen house here. And, they decided it was okay. And then after that, the governor never declared a state of emergency. He said it didn't meet the criteria. Fortunately, as of yesterday, FEMA said, the heck with that, we're coming in. And like I said, they're bringing an incident management team in there. Now, that should be telling you that they have some concerns with how this incident is being managed. If FEMA's sending in an incident management team to run what's going on. So hopefully things may get better, but long term, I think you're dealing with widespread contamination of the land. Everybody I know that has asked, I said, go get a baseline medical physical. If you're on well water, have a baseline test of your well water. Get some soil sampling if you're doing farming. Keep yourself safe, clean everything, and try to make this through. But for the people in East Palestine, even if they could clean everything up 100%, they're going to be a victim of some form of eco-terrorism where who'd want to go live there? You want to leave? You want to sell your house? Who's going to buy it? This town might end up being a write-off.
Sal Caggiano, it's such a shocking story. I hope, for what it's worth, I hope you do get the sense of how shocked and appalled we are at this distance looking on at it. And so our thoughts very much with the people of East Palestine. Wish you all the best. Thank you for your time this evening. After the break...